Dear viewers, why is the study of humanities important in the modern collegiate education? Is it important for us to understand how the world views us, as well as also to know as to how we view the world? To speak about all this and much more, have with me today Professor Balu. Warm welcome to the show.
Thank you, Deepak.
So, how did you get interested in all this?
Well, it's a long story, but to make it short, I was a natural scientist by training. Then I did some kind of social work for a period of time and got interested in social problems in society. And I had career choices before I got interested in these social problems of doing the IAS and so on and so forth. But then when I got myself involved in social problems, I discovered that we need to understand.
Somebody asked you a fundamental question.
Yes. Well, it was a group of students I had known. And when I was about 18 years old, one day one of them asked me, what is the responsibility of youth towards poverty and suffering in India? Now, the strangest thing about that question was, I never knew you could ask that question, let alone answer it.
Why did you think so?
Nothing in my tradition had prepared me for it.
Okay, you just live for yourself.
Well, and you see, I saw the slums, I saw the poor people, and I never thought about it because they were part
That
of
you could do something.
Yeah, and that they were part of the environment, and there was this background idea of karma. It's background, it's never explicit, but that people are poor because of what they did in their previous birth story, something like that, I suppose. But never occurred to me that we human beings could actively build a society where each one of us could be happy and flourish. And that's what this question hinted at.
Sharing happiness.
Absolutely, and being happy, yeah.
Okay, but then when you started asking this question to yourself, you did a few things.
Yeah.
And ultimately had to walk out of your house.
Right.
And live by yourself, and then had to go off to Belgium.
Yeah, absolutely.
To study more.
Absolutely. Just to shortly summarize it. Then I started going to the slums and I was doing my chartered accountancy. And then my father, very nice man, but from an older generation, of course, but he said, I had to make a choice, either living for myself and then helping my family and so on and so forth until I reach the nation, or be foolish enough to want to help the nation first. Well, a combination of both youthful idealism and belief in the goal I was working for. I said, I want to help the nation.
Then you had to leave the house.
They said, leave the house. I said, okay, so I left the house. Worked for a couple of years as a casual laborer, quarry worker, and so on.
But why did you have to do that? Just for the experience?
No, I had nowhere to live. Nowhere to live. It's as simple as that. And there was nobody to fund us.
But you're still working with the same group.
Yeah, but we had no money. No one was funding us. And they were all young people like me, 18, 19, 20
and most
years
of them
old.
are foreigners also.
No, they were all Indians, Christians.
Okay.
But not foreigners.
But you met this foreigner.
Oh,
the lady.
That is when I became, so I had grown up a little bit, graduated in all these things. Then this young girl, who she was about 23, 24 then.
Where did she come from?
She came from Belgium.
Okay, but she came through the same organization?
No, not really. There was this kind of alternative tourism in Holland, which allowed people to come and visit India in a different way. So she wanted to do alternative tourism. Let's not simply go visit Taj Mahal and so on.
Come and experience India.
Come and experience. And I met her and I immediately fell in love with her.
Okay.
She did not. She ran away from me.
Okay.
So it took me about 3 years of chasing, in a manner of speaking, before I finally trapped her in Belgium.
Okay.
And I wanted to, by that time I had come to Marxism, I had problems with Marxism. So I felt that Marxism will not quite work for India. But then I had to figure out why it would not work for India. And those days I could not get the literature required to do the study. So she said, come to Belgium. So, I mean, this is what I wanted. It's what the doctor prescribed also. So,
okay, but you went there and studied for many years.
What happened then was that when I went to Europe, you know, I knew English, I had done natural sciences, I knew Western philosophy, political theory, I knew more about Western history than Indian history. So I assumed that it would not be a problem to relate to Europeans.
But you just could not get into that society.
No, absolutely not. It took me about 4 years to discover that I could not get into the society. So it is then that I started.
You thought just with this knowledge you were welcome anywhere.
More than welcome, that I'd feel at home and that I would have friends the way I had friends in India.
Okay.
And then I discovered not only the type of relationships are different, I also saw that they didn't have the kind of depth and the kind of warmth that I was used to, not just in India, throughout Asia, in fact. And I couldn't relate to them intuitively. And I had decided there, when I went to Europe, I didn't want to be put in an ethnic ghetto.
Okay, not just mingle with
Fellow
Indians who are
yeah.
like...
So to go to Belgium to meet somebody from Goa, Maharashtra, for example, I didn't want to do that. Then I would go to Goa or Maharashtra, not go to Belgium.
But you had a friend there already, a Belgian. Did she actually help you to
Well, without
assimilate?
her, see, in fact, the first 10 years of my life there, she supported me financially.
Okay.
Otherwise, I could never have made what I made. But the point is, from there I discovered that I did not know Europe at all, in some deep sense of the word.
Though you thought you knew.
Which I thought I knew as well as the back of my hand.
Okay.
But then I didn't know the back of my hand either.
Okay.
Yeah.
You knew the philosophers, the scientists,
yeah.
the heroes,
the
politicians.
Oh, absolutely. I still remember when I went to, first I landed up in Germany, in Frankfurt. Then I had a kind of horripilation. Oh, this is the land where Hegel walked, and Marx walked, and Kant walked, and Rosa Luxemburg walked. So it was a kind of, coming, it was a desirable Mecca in some senses for me.
Yeah.
But then I discovered that actually we don't know anything about Europe.
You know only about what you were allowed to know.
Yeah, which is what I call, we know what the Public Relations Department of Europe has told us about themselves. Then I began to study, go deep into, to find out what does it mean to be an Indian. That was my problem suddenly.
Okay.
What distinguishes me from a European? I mean, when I went there, I thought it would be my food habits, or it would be my dress habits of walking barefoot at home.
Eating non-vegetarian food,
non-vegetarian food,
which you could not keep for many
Well, that was when I was trying to prove myself that I was not a Brahmin. I had to prove to the world. So then I discovered that really, we know nothing about Europe at all in a deep sense of the word.
Okay, and you said you also realized that you did not know much about yourself as an Indian.
Yeah, that's the next thing. So then I started studying what made me into an Indian, what is a European. Then I began to read how Europe has described India in the last 400 years. And the strangest thing is that I did not recognize India, either of my experience or of my knowledge, in any of those 400 years of descriptions of India.
Okay. But that literature was available even in India, right?
Right.
What is written about us that was published in
it's
European
published,
countries?
but you see, even to this day, it's not known because, in a way, we don't have some kind of a nationalist upbringing. Okay.
Okay.
So we don't have a kind of nationalism.
We assume that maybe that could be right and what we know is wrong.
Well, that I find difficult to believe because surely human experiences cannot be wrong. Our beliefs could be wrong, but our experiences cannot be wrong. And what was wrong here is that they described us in a way which did not agree with either my experience or the experience of the fellow Indians I knew.
Okay.
So I started digging deep into it and discovered something even more horrendous. Namely, what I thought I knew about India comes straight from these European descriptions of India.
Okay.
Yeah. So there I was. I didn't know India intellectually. And then I discovered that my knowledge of India itself was given by the textbooks in schools and colleges which I read, all authored within the framework of European understanding of India, or European experience of India. So that's about 25 years ago. So since then I started doing research to find out how does Europe look if an Indian looks at Europe? First question. Second is, how would we describe our own culture? Not to glorify our past or anything. I mean, I don't believe that. I mean, even today there are injustice and atrocities abound in India. So I'm not trying to present a kind of a glorified picture of India. But nevertheless, I think our descriptions must be true to our experiences of India.
And first of all, you want to know whether in India you really had those heroes who actually walked countries of Europe.
Yeah. Yeah. That is more, for example, the question came up, West has produced so many geniuses. Yeah. And to me, one of the problems was, why do we not have similar geniuses? Why did we not produce them? I mean, forget geniuses. We could have at least someone like Popper or someone like Wittgenstein or something. In the last 400 or 500 years, we haven't produced. And the question is why? And the answer that I began to discover is that we reproduce Western social sciences like mantras. We do hardly understand them. So when you don't understand something and reproduce something as a mantra, how can you do original research? Reproduce something as a mantra. How can you do original research?
For instance, even the definition of democracy, it's entirely indigenous when it comes to the way Indians have experienced it here. But whatever that we read about all these things, it's basically like what's been told.
Absolutely. Not only that, we have failed to do.
For instance, you're talking about the word religion and dharma.
Yeah. Well, that's one of the first. That was one of the first results of my research. Let me begin with an anecdote. Perhaps many people in India have had. I must have been about 12, 13, 14 when I went to join the high school, and I had to I had to fill up an application form. And one of the columns in it was, what is your religion? And it said Christian, Muslim, Buddhist, Hindu, other. No, I didn't understand the question. So when I asked my father, who during those days, I'm talking about 1950s, early 60s, who was a double graduate, I asked him, what should I write here? Because I didn't understand either the question, what is your religion, nor did I recognize myself in any of these four categories.
Okay.
So my father looked at the question, said, write not applicable.
Okay.
So I wrote not applicable and went and took it to the class teacher. He was a Muslim. He said, come here. So I went up to him. He said, are you a Christian? I said, no, sir. Are you a Muslim? No, sir. Are you a Buddhist? No, sir. Then you're a Hindu. I said, no, sir, I'm a Sanketi.
Okay.
Now, Sanketi is a language that a very small group of people speak.
Okay.
And it has no written script, no written grammar, but we call ourselves Sanketis after the language. I said, no, sir, I'm a Sanketi. He said, no, you're a Hindu. No, sir, I'm a Sanketi. He hit me on the head. He said, write down Hindu.
Okay.
So I wrote down Hindu. And next year, same story. This time there was another class teacher. And I thought I would try the experiment out with him. And again wrote not applicable because I didn't understand the word Hindu at all.
Okay.
Went through the same process, got beaten on the head again. And since then, if somebody were to ask me what my religion was, I knew what answer I had to give.
Okay.
I was a Hindu. Now, this is the strangest thing about my upbringing and the kind of reading I did, is that it made me forget this experience completely. So when I started doing research in Belgium, 30 odd years later, these incidents began to resurface in my memory. So this experience of being a Hindu, which did not rhyme, which did not have any resonance within my experiential world, when I started doing research, I discovered that this was not only my experience. I remember this is not only my experience, but a lot of Indians like this. So then I asked myself the question, where, for instance, do we have Hinduism? Where does it exist? How do we know we have a religion? How do we know we have Buddhism? I started going to the history. What do I discover? That religions, so-called, like Hinduism, Buddhism, were actually discoveries invented by the British, by the Europeans in the universities. And that's why today, for example, when one says about Hinduism and so on, we are simply reproducing words created by European savants abroad.
Okay.
But it doesn't refer to anything in Indian culture.
So how do you refer to this big mass of people who belong to a certain way of life, into a certain set of practices?
Well, this is exactly the interesting thing. The Indian people consists of a variety of traditions.
Okay, but what is that actually they can put themselves under?
Why does one need to put themselves under anything at all?
Don't you think that you need to have a larger identity?
No, not really. It's much more a horizontal connection.
Okay.
That is, A is related to B closely, B is related to C closely.
Okay.
So by the time you come to Z, A is only very, very distantly related to the Z, even though Y is related very closely to Y.
Okay.
So Z is closely related to Y. Okay. So what we have here in our culture,
okay,
and that is why some of the political developments in India are so disturbing, is that we are a people who live according to the local varieties, local traditions, and what we call in Sanskrit sampradayas, paramparas, and so on. So in that sense, what makes us united is much more like a family connection, the ship we have with each other.
But don't you think that, in the present day world, a larger connection and some kind of unity is also extremely important to protect yourself in the face of onslaughts from other religions?
Absolutely. But then
if a Christian missionary actually comes and talks to a very small group saying that, look, you really don't belong to anything bigger, come and belong to the larger family of Christ, what would he be able to say?
Well, let's put it this way. Let's ask a hypothetical question.
Okay.
A missionary comes to you and says, Deepak, join Christianity, or a missionary comes to me and says, Balu, join Christianity. What are we going to say? We're going to say, look, thanks very much, but we're quite happy with the way we are.
Okay.
All right? So in that sense, most of the reactions of Indians has been so far, to Christian missionaries as to
But
Muslim.
that's not been as exemplary as what you're talking about.
True, but you're then talking about converting certain sections of illiterate people,
Okay.
but then on the basis of material inducements.
Okay.
But you see, in fact, Christianity itself frowns against these kind of conversions. Okay, for instance, the Roman Catholic Church and well-established Protestant churches
Okay.
do not want conversion through inducement.
Okay.
But there are some who are doing it. Yeah, in certain parts of India.
Okay.
But then we can put, okay, so even if they do that, how long will this continue? How long will this succeed? Because the people they convert revert to their ancient practices.
Oh, okay.
So this is a process of Christianization and Hinduization in India with people who are not literate.
Okay.
So they continue their practices. So we don't have to be afraid, I find.
But don't you think that we've already progressed too much as a society and identified ourselves under certain banners and identities?
Sure, if it is convenient to call yourself a Hindu,
Okay.
the way I did myself after being beaten twice by my teachers, call yourself a Hindu. But don't think that behind that word there is a specific religion called Hinduism, the way, for example, Christianity, Islam, Judaism has specific religions.
Some set of code of rules.
Or practices, maybe some vague general ideas about the nature of the cosmos. Or, for example, the belief that each one of us fundamentally has that it is the right of everyone to be happy on earth. Yeah? If you ask, why are you born? Whatever story an Indian might give, ultimately he'll say, what should I do if you ask him? He'll say, go and be happy. Yeah? So this one thing, for example, which is not quite the same in Semitic religions. So if this makes us into Hindus and Indians, no problem. Fair enough.
But then you spent about 40 years in Belgium and you're still there and you want to do something in India, particularly because you feel so sad about the kind of education we are offering our youngsters.
Absolutely. See, what's happening today in Karnataka, one tendency is dovetailing into another with another tendency. The first is that there's an extraordinary mushrooming of engineering colleges and so on and science and applied scientific institutions, which is a good thing. But then they're sucking up all the bright minds into these kinds of institutions.
Okay.
The result of it is humanities and social sciences are beginning to die out, and only those who do not make it anywhere else drift into social sciences and humanities.
But is it important to study humanities as an academic subject?
Well, it is necessary because look at the kind of problems you're confronting. Whether you talk about the economic crisis, or you talk about social conflicts, religious conflicts, violence, dislocation of family values, all these things. Now, the only way we can do something about it is by understanding, on the one hand, the history of these dislocations on the one side, and on the other, looking at our own traditions, our own strengths, and to draw solutions from there. Okay. So in that sense, if we do not do serious, in one sense, scientific study into humanities, we have no choice.
But you've also been saying that some literati, not just also them, but also some writers have been pretending to be specialists in humanities.
Well, that was the second thing. The strangest thing about Karnataka is the domination of literary figures who have defined social debates. It is they who tell us what the social questions are, what the social answers should be, whereas their expertise is only at the level of realm of either writing novels and drama or poetry or criticizing them. But they have little.
But they're also reflecting the society in their works, aren't they?
Yes, but they reflect the way ordinary people do in the street. They don't have any special competence. Whereas social sciences, at least that is a presupposition, have a better understanding of social issues and social problems and try and solve it. True, there was conflict between people. But the question is this: how do we know it is a religious conflict? Two communities clashed with each other. That is absolutely true. There was murder and mayhem and tragedy. But if suppose for a moment it was not a religious conflict at all, then surely the solution that we give to that conflict, if it is a wrong conflict, it will only exacerbate the situation. And look at the history of independent India. Continual increase of what has been called religious and communal conflicts. And we're treating them as religious and communal conflicts. So it could be the case. What you have is a Muslim and a non-Muslim fighting, but could be for entirely different reasons. It might not be a religious conflict at all.
It may not be an ideological conflict.
It might be an ethnic conflict, it might be a social conflict. But it might
could be just about a temple or a mosque, nothing to do with two religions.
Right. It could also be that there were social communities with pent-up tensions, which suddenly exploded like
with just one excuse.
Exactly. So what if The kind of conflicts we're facing in India are not religious conflicts. And why, what if? The reason why they have exacerbated in the last 50 years is because we've been treating them as a religious conflict.
Okay.
Okay? This is simply one of the issues. So social science is able to raise these issues and not literary figures. Because literary figures assume the common sense, assume as
Okay, but in spite of so much development in social sciences in Europe, why is that society not as mature as we expect it to be?
Oh, there you come to a very, very huge problem. You see, it's my claim that most of the social sciences today that we know as social sciences simply assume as true many presuppositions from the Bible. Yeah, and so when they embroider that, when they develop that, what you get is not science but theology. Let me give you a very small example. We have things like personality psychology, developmental psychology, child psychology, and so on. All of them assume that something in you develops, a person. Of course, you need to know what is that entity in you called the person, how it develops. And you go do deeper research. They will say they don't know what person is. They refer to philosophers. You go to philosophers, they say, no, psychologists study it. But then if you go to both disciplines and dig deep, you know what you find out? They are studying the development of the soul as St. Augustine defined soul. Now, here is an interesting thing. In India, or not just in the whole of Asia and most of Africa, there is no conception of a soul. So if what we believe is true, to put it crudely, Asians and Africans have no soul. Now, secularized version of the soul is the person in psychology. And why is it there is no scientific personality psychology, developmental psychology, and so on? Is because they're not doing science, they're embroidering theology. So what's happened, this is just one example. I can give you many more examples.
But after so many years of research and understanding, don't you think that anybody would have not at least come up with the actual science behind?
Well, yes, they would have.
Works?
In a way, multiple attempts have been made in the history of Western intellectual tradition to show how deeply religious these domains are, but they never took off. But the second big problem, you see, the Western intellectuals have assumed the truth, the secularized truth about the Bible so much.
Even about neighborhood to congregation to a public thought to a lot of things, like what you say is absolutely true, because it's all based on the Bible.
Absolutely. Bible and Christian experience. Now, when we don't have...
but nobody has actually looked at it in a very realistic manner to actually say, this is what I see and this is from where I should actually learn.
Exactly. Now, this is what is absent.
So perhaps India is a very fertile ground.
Well, that is the hope, because I think, to come back to combine both questions, real social sciences, I believe, is going to develop in India and not anywhere else. So the miserable situation of social sciences we face today is actually a precondition, because we can, without the hindrances of the last 200-300 years.
So this is a very large laboratory, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So you're starting something in Shimoga, that is in Kuempu University. What do you plan to do? You're starting this institute called Academy called ASHA.
Yeah, ASHA stands for simply, it's an acronym for Academy for Social Sciences and Humanities.
Okay.
And I hope to get the support of the state and the central government as seed money.
But it's a very costly project. You want to actually bring the best minds from all over.
Yeah. I want to first rope in all the best minds from Karnataka universities. Then I want to rope in the best minds in India. And I want to make use of the international top figures and continue.
And you want to make it attractive for people to come and teach, to do research, to translate some of the best books from the world.
Social sciences into vernacular languages. And to teach, in that sense, 21st century research.
And also create syllabus.
What?
Syllabus.
Yes. The idea is also in the course of it, to transform the academic syllabus curricula of social sciences and then rewrite in ways appropriate to 21st
You've already brought in some money from abroad, from your country.
From my university. It is
but you become a Belgian now?
Yes, I am. I had to, because you could not... So the problem is, Belgium is such a small country that the shortest thing you'll be crossing borders. And when I had the Indian passport, each time I had to get a visa, and they made it more and more difficult for me and started humiliating me, basically, because I was an Indian. So I was, in that sense, forced to become a Belgian.
Okay.
And also because of my employment. I needed to be a
So you brought in about 4 crores of,
yeah, so it's
equal to 4 crores of rupees.
Yeah, about 4.5 crores. It's a pittance compared to what I want.
Okay.
But that's simply the investment my university could make. So we have done it in Kuvempu University to build a local
You're also
research
looking
center.
around for support from other
Yeah.
people.
I'm now trying to I'm hoping that state government, it is interested in helping me. Central government would help me.
But once it's established, how is it going to be? What is going to be the structure, the scope, the philosophy?
The structure is actually
the
very
constitution.
Yeah, the structure we want to make it into an independent institution, and we would like the vice chancellors of all the Karnataka universities to be on the governing board, and the chairman of the governing board will be one of the vice chancellors, because it's a center it's an academy meant to help the universities, and we hope to involve people from multiple walks of life, politicians, media persons, industrialists, bureaucrats,
Okay.
academicians, into different kind of advisory capacities and so on, with the focus on training and training young researchers into doing the kind of research that 21st century needs.
You are currently the Director of Humanities in Ghent University.
Yeah. I'm director for a research center, yeah.
Okay, but what kind of support are you getting from your university?
As I said, we already invested, I think,
No, not just the money, but you're also getting a lot of fellows to come and work here.
At the moment I have about 7 doctoral students, out of whom 3 have just finished a doctorate. They are learning Kannada now.
Oh,
So the idea is that in about 2 years' time they can become very proficient in Kannada, and they would come here, and the idea is that we do not ask anything, material financial gains from this academy. My work and the work of my fellow students would be all borne by my university, so that we come here, work gratis, completely free, in order to build this academy.
okay. You have some understanding, formal understanding between
Yes.
your university and Kuvempu University?
More than that, we also have a formal memorandum of agreement with about 7 Karnataka universities and my universities. It was signed last year when the King of Belgians came to India. I was with the part of the royal entourage. So we signed memorandum of agreement in the presence of the king. So the idea is basically that Belgium would focus, at least Flemish part of Belgium, from my university, is going to focus very much in the first phase on Karnataka as a region, and Karnataka universities in general.
Okay.
And
How hopeful does it look?
How realistic, how hopeful?
Hopeful rather.
Hopeful, I'm
Because
immensely
to
hopeful.
be able to make it possible, you need to see some hope in it.
Right. See, one thing is as a person, I'm immensely hopeful. And second thing is, I have discovered very nice people, including you, Deepak, who has so kindly invited me here. There are fantastic people like you in the world, in India. So I'm sure, if you help me, which you're already doing, I don't see why this should be a problem at all.
On that note, I can only wish you the best in your endeavor, right?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having come to this show.